Greetings, fencers. So, I did get a cold steel cutting longsword. It will have its own video where I go through what it feels like. This video is just for me to see some of my cutting. But I'll talk over a little about some of the extra stuff with cutting, like targets, why I got the sword, etc. If you're starting off too, you may find it interesting. I'm not going to talk much about technique, apart from the blatant stuff. There's other channels out there that know how to cut. People say different things though, so you can try and navigate that. The first thing I will say again is what this is for. It's a training tool for essentially one purpose, to practice edge alignment. There's other forms that add structure and strength to the mix by having harder targets, something like tatami or actual simulators, but you can cut through these bottles with poor elements and changing the cut line. Here you can see some examples where the cut drastically changed, but the bottle was still cut through fully. Something like that would fail with a more solid target. It's important to look at the cut and be critical with trying to get perfectly straight lines, because those are the ones that will most likely succeed no matter the situation. After trying to cut many different types of plastic with the machete, I ran into some dilemmas. Some plastics I cut through consistently every time, while others I would barely cut through. Apart from the plastic, there were 3 variables that could affect this: my cutting skill, the edge angle that I put on my machete, which is definitely not consistent, and that short blades don't generate a lot of speed and power, so I was sort of limited by what bottles I could cut through and practice on. I saw this sword for sale in Canada for about $300 and went for it, and that would eliminate 2 of those variables, because it would be someone else's consistent edge and a significantly longer sword that would generate more speed and power. Something interesting with the sword is the angle isn't fine enough to cut paper or any of those paper tests, but my machete can. Now I know that paper tests are not the most important for a sword, but generally people show cutting swords doing it, and on paper cartons it is noticeably frayed where it was pretty smooth with a machete. So it is probably not super sharp. I have not sharpened it. This is the stock edge, but still cuts many things effortlessly. Here I fail on this bottle, so I cut harder on the next one. I immediately know I had stepped in front of the sword, so the next one I was really conscious of having the sword leading. Here's my first completed thwart cut. I was pretty happy. It was the last cut I had to figure out. I've been able to do every cut now. I've heard that little bottles aren't the best thing. They're so light and easily sent flying. Some places have different plastics that change it up, but I can definitely see they're not easy, and rarely is it a nice looking cut line after. I phased those single-use bottles out of my life, but I asked everyone for their recycling, and what one of my friends actually did was wait for recycling day and went down a couple streets just grabbing bags that were mostly cutting-worthy containers and bottles. So I had an insane amount of bottles. If you're needing containers, that is definitely one way. May look awkward though. These 2 squinters were done so slowly and effortlessly went through that it really showed me it doesn't have to be a hard cut. I like to cut a lot of caps off. The muscle memory of me aiming at upper openings and not wanting to hit the wood either make it so I cut high and sometimes miss. In case you notice my posture, it's actually just genetic. That's why it always looks like I'm slouching. I could definitely have better posture, but that bone structure will always be with me. You can actually see on both these cuts they're curved, and definitely not ideal. The next cut is definitely a lot better. Something nice about this sword is it is very usable one-handed. From feel, it is the lightest steel longsword I have. So I'm glad I'm able to keep practicing this element of historical fencing. Definitely lots of structure elements that I am going to work on changing over time and improving. So thanks for watching, keep studying, keep practicing.
You gonna take it a quarter of an inch at a time?
Yeah.